Good evening. It is 6:01 p.m. on Tuesday, June 24th, 2025, and this is a special meeting of the Groton Board of Education Policy Committee. I call the meeting to order. We have present with us committee member Andrea Ackerman, Assistant Superintendent Anne Marie Mancini, Denise Doolittle, who's in charge of special education, Clint Kennedy, our IT guru, Jody Goller, who is the policy person for CABE, our indomitable superintendent, Susan Austin, and in the background, Kate Brown, who is a technician and helper who makes this broadcast possible. I'm going to start with a review of the minutes for Tuesday, May 13th, and then I will entertain a suggestion from Mr. Kennedy. Uh, I don't have a light there. It's okay. Andrea, have you had a chance to review the minutes of the May 13th meeting? Okay, well, if you would trust me and care to make a motion to accept the minutes, the minutes are, to my perception, accurate and complete. So if you'd like to make a motion, that's fine. Or if you'd rather I make the motion, hopefully you'll second it. I can't hear you. You're muted, Andrea.
No, you do it, and I hate Robert and his blooming rules. So
Okay,
I don't know
so
if I can second it or not, but if I can, I will.
well, you can second it. You can recuse yourself, whichever you prefer.
I'll second it.
Okay, so I move that we accept the minutes of Tuesday, the meeting of our May 13th meeting without amendment as submitted. I so move. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Andrea Ackerman. So this is Matt and Andrea. And all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, nobody else is here, so it's 2 in favor, none opposed, none abstaining. Clint, you had made an informal suggestion before. Do you want to make it again?
If I may, if it pleases the board subcommittee and it doesn't put anybody else out on this call too much, I was proposing that we go old business first and then new business.
I have no objection to that. Let me share with you how I had expected it to go in terms of time allocation. I had thought that based on a discussion that I had with Susan that I'll share with you all in a moment, that we would not need more than 15 minutes on I'm looking at the last meeting of this, on the school climate, and then spend another 15 minutes on therapy dog and leave us an hour or an hour for artificial intelligence, and that's builds in an extra 30 minutes because we don't want to do more than 2 hours for whatever runs a little bit over. Susan, is that comfortable? Did that sound like a fair estimate to you?
It sounds like a long night for 90 degrees, and knowing Denise is still at central office, could we do, since climate's only 15 minutes, do climate then AI and maybe shorten it up a little bit and then I don't see the teacher who's here for the therapy dogs, so
Okay,
So-
know that
I'm
she's
comfortable with
joined
that
us.
if you are, Clint.
I have no problem with that. Do we know the name of the therapy dog person? Because we do have somebody waiting in the waiting room, but we have
Yes,
not put them forward because we didn't recognize the name.
She just emailed me. It's Leah Mucherone.
Great. So Kate, as you're listening, Leah's approved. So when we're there, please bring her forward. Thank you.
Okay.
Virtually.
So we're now talking about policy 5131.911, which is the Connecticut School Climate Policy Proposal. I had chatted individually with some committee members about some questions I had about that policy, and had the opportunity to meet for about 10 minutes with Susan yesterday before the regular board meeting. And Susan, I'm going to recapitulate what I understand we kind of agreed on, and you confirm or deny as is appropriate, that my questions were more in the regulations, and the way it works for anybody who's viewing this, welcome to the meeting.
Thank you.
The policy is the responsibility of the Board of Education. The regulations are the responsibility of the administration. We do not have any official say in it. Susan has always been gracious and shared them with us to get our feedback, and has on many occasions integrated some of our feedback in the regulations. So at last night's brief meeting together, viewing that I really did not want to spend the time, I saw if we got into the comments on the regulations, we'd be here well over an hour and a half on that alone. So we're going to focus uniquely, if Susan is in accord, uniquely on the policy piece, with the understanding that Susan's going to work with her staff to tighten up some of the questions that we had on the regulations. That'll let us set the policy for first reading, with the understanding that we will get a look at the regulations before the second reading. Does that coincide with your understanding, Susan?
Yep. Thank you.
That's a yes. Okay.
And you made a couple good suggestions on the policy, because we felt some of the language was redundant, and
Okay.
and
I'm going to
so I
just turn
did
my light
take
on.
notes on that.
You see a dog poke into the screen. That's my second best friend. Okay, so we all have with us policy P 5113-.911. Kate or Susan, did you want to put that on the screen?
Do not have that.
Clint, do you have it from the?
I
Minute-
can send it. I can send it to Caitlin.
Okay, thank you.
If you'll
Sure.
do that. So we'll just start and we'll put it, we'll just start and we'll put it on. I am looking, oh, you changed your place on the screen, Andrea. Andrea, do you have any comments that you'd like to initiate your reaction to the policy, Connecticut school climate policy? Just to open up the floor
Yeah.
for comments, and then I'll turn it over to Susan, Denise, and anyone else that superintendent wants.
No, the only thing that again, is that I'm going to be looking at consistency, in terms of, presentation of the language, that's all. In other words, commas. So, and things like that.
You're looking for consistency.
Exactly.
We appreciate that, Andrea. Thank you.
Okay. Susan, would you like to take the lead in explaining to?
Actually, Denise will, because this is by law something we have to have in effect at the start of the school year, actually July 1. But we need to also prepare our administrative team so they understand the law and they're able to implement this policy and the regulations. So this is what's most important. And this is kicking it up a notch from what they've had to do, but they are very knowledgeable on covering their bases when it comes to school climate and bullying or acts of, any outbursts of behavior and what they have to do. So there's some differences in this. So we need to make sure that they're prepared for the beginning of the school year. That's all I need to say.
Denise, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Matthew and Susan. So the new policy is really aimed at improving school climate overall, and it's based on a public act that was passed last year. And we have had the year to review it and implement, as Susan said, on July 1, full implementation. Many of the key elements that are in the legislation align directly with the priorities that our district and many other districts are already working on.
Excuse me one second, Denise. Can you
Sure.
bump the size up just one more, Kate?
Let me try.
I apologize for interrupting you, Denise.
Well, that's okay.
Outlook, so I'm not sure how to do that.
Clint, can you help us navigate?
Oh, here it is.
Oh, you got it, Caitlin.
There you go. That looks good, Kate.
Control plus usually works as well.
Thanks.
Okay,
So,
Denise.
sure. So some of the key elements in the policy really focus on redefining our behavioral response systems. So what that means is, how do we respond to challenging behavior? because we know that this has a huge impact on our school climate. And our goal is to improve climate by being more responsive to challenging behavior, using restorative practices, and particularly using a tiered response to challenging behavior. So we're going to have certain steps that we're going to take when students exhibit challenging behavior. And those steps are designed to support the student as well as their peers in the classroom. Because we know that oftentimes students in the classroom are observing challenging behavior and it has an impact on them as well. So there are certain times when that challenging behavior impacts other students directly that we'll be communicating with not only the parents of the student who exhibited the challenging behavior, but possibly maybe one or two students in the classroom that were impacted directly by that behavior. The policy also allows teachers to request that the crisis intervention team come together and meet and discuss options in terms of interventions and strategies that would support the student. And the districts are all required now to give parents of students who engage in multiple acts of challenging behavior resources so that parents can go out and they can pursue support for their child, whether that be Child and Family Agency, the Groton Youth and Family Services, or the Urgent Crisis Center. There are going to be resources shared with parents so that they can help support their child. Another important component of the policy is to elevate the role of our climate committees in the school. So each school will have a designated climate improvement committee. They will also have a climate coordinator. And the climate coordinator will assist in implementing a lot of the response protocols that I talked about a moment ago. Also required, again, this is all required per legislation. Also required is that each school develop a school climate improvement plan that would be developed by the stakeholders within that building. And there's certain requirements of the plan that we've outlined in a template for each school. So it will address, who is on your crisis intervention team? What strategies or interventions does each school provide to students who have challenging behaviors? How often are they coming together and looking at their response protocols? And how are we communicating with parents? Also included in the policy, again, is a school climate survey that's administered annually. Our district has been administering a school climate survey for many years. And we gather input from all of our stakeholders, parents, students, and staff. And then we analyze that data and we draw conclusions and we set goals. There are many districts that are not doing that. So as a result of this legislation, they will be doing that as well. So that's just an overview on some of the key components of the new policy. I would just like to add that the policy that addresses bullying, as we've previously known it, is being changed in terms of this new climate policy. So the focus will not be on investigating and verifying acts of bullying. The focus will be on addressing challenging behavior and developing interventions, strategies, and resources to assist that student, as well as other students who've been impacted by that behavior. And there is a reporting form, so we'll still have a bullying reporting form, as well as a reporting form for challenging behavior. But the definition of bullying has changed. The definition really looks at an act. It can be a single act. Bullying no longer has to be a repeated act. It can be repeated, but it can be a single act that is severe in nature. And bullying, as we now know it, really includes some type of power imbalance, whereas the perpetrator is, engaging in behaviors that embarrass the victim, demean the victim, belittle the victim. There's that perceived or actual power imbalance involved in the behavior. So we're looking at it from, I think, a more holistic way and a more responsive way in terms of how we address the behavior and how we support both, the student engaging in that behavior, as well as the students and the staff who are impacted by that behavior.
So, Andrea, do you have any questions at this time?
No, I'm just astounded that we're at this point.
So I do have two clarifying questions. You did not say this. I read it between the lines, so tell me if I understood correctly. That we have done the climate survey for a long time. We're going to be doing a new climate plan with a new committee in each school. And I am presuming or assuming, both of which are very dangerous verbs, that the climate survey, the nature of the climate survey may be modified so that it handshakes with gathering data that will help in the climate plan. Is that correct?
Correct. So I did not mention that the state has shared with us, and it is in your policy. There are now national school climate standards, and Connecticut has adopted them. So all of our school climate improvement plans will address the 5 Connecticut school climate standards, and we will explain how we're addressing each standard at each school. We will also write goals that are based on the results of our climate survey data that we obtained just recently.
Thank you. And my second question has to do with some of the words you used about demeaning behavior, embarrassing behavior, maybe, quote, minor or incidental, non-physically damaging, but nonetheless pushing, other inappropriate behavior. My sense of life is, and I think this has not changed from clearly Mark Twain's time at least, and probably going back millennia, that there is within human nature displays of behavior that are less than ideal. And for you not to be doing 20 or 30 or 40 investigations or research per month, there's got to be some standard to differentiate between, to define what the level of behavior is that rises to an investigative report. My mom, your mother wears combat boots. Well, that could hurt my feelings. It might make me feel demeaned. Is that going to result in something? How do we define what rises to the level of necessity for intervention?
Sure. So there's 3 types of bullying, can take many forms, but there's 3 types that bullying tends to take: verbal, social, and physical. So bullying is now defined as an unwanted and aggressive act, unwanted and aggressive behavior among children in grades K through 12 that involves a real or perceived power imbalance. So anyone is free to submit a complaint or a report if they feel they've been bullied, just like before. Bullying is now also encompassing the term teen dating violence. So it would be available for students to complete, and the staff, would determine whether or not it met the criteria of bullying through their investigation.
Well, my concern flows into operations, which you guys will have to resolve. It's not a policy issue. I could see you overwhelmed with complaints that you might even consider personally, not to be frivolous, but to be of a nature that they really don't rise to a level of needing enforcement. I hope you will consider, as you look over the regulations, This is not for our committee to tell you what to do, but I hope you'll consider trying to wrestle with defining, give yourselves a break. I mean, you just don't want to be doing 20 or 30 of these things a month.
No, and I
Matthew?
will, I will clarify that, more times than not, these disagreements are resolved, at the school level, and they do not rise to the, level of a complaint.
Matthew, I did, now that you've gone to this, to definitions, you know, I didn't want to say it because as I said, I didn't really have a chance to really read the minutes and all. However, and to really pay attention to the policy. However, where do we get the definition of school climate? And what is it?
So that's a good question. We were talking before the meeting. Matthew asked us to compare the Birch and Moses policy and regulations with CABE, and we did. And they both policies and regulations align with the House bill that was passed last year by the legislature. So all of the definitions are in House Bill. Have to find the name of it. But they're all included in the legislation. They do define, your question was about school climate.
Yeah, I would think that the definition of.
We have a
climate would be-
definition of school climate, Andrea, in the regulations.
Yeah, it's the first definition.
Oh, okay, all right,
Means the
as I said,
quality and character of the
Yep,
school life
okay.
with a particular focus on the quality of relationships within the school community, et cetera.
Yes, but please be aware that all of these definitions and steps in terms of the tiered responses are mandated through legislation. So we
Yeah.
literally are adopting the law as it's written, or
As
as it
it's
was written
okay.
a year ago.
All right.
May I ask a question of Jody? If you're still, I can't see your image, Jody. Are you on with us?
Yes, my image is there too. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I only see 5 at a time.
Okay.
Is the concern that I just raised something that you've heard from other districts about how we define so they just don't drown in paperwork? Am I overreaching?
Yeah.
with that
Again, I
concern?
think for clarification's sake, that when this bill was written in the 2023 legislative session, it was required that CABE write a policy that takes into account all the aspects and definitions of the legislation. So unlike a lot of laws that are written that require policies, typically those laws basically say the policy needs to include these elements, but boards of ed, policy committees can develop their own local policies as long as they comply with the law. This is a little bit different. This actually says that this is the law. These are all the elements of the law. CABE is required to write a policy that boards must adopt as written. So, and this is really not a bullying policy, it's a school climate policy. So all of the issues that districts deal with will be around reports of challenge or observations of challenging behavior. Sometimes when your administration is confronted with challenging behaviors or report of challenging behavior, of course your administration will investigate it as they would any challenging behavior, but they're not investigating it as a bullying report. They're investigating it as a challenging behavior report. If their investigation reveals that it meets the definition of bullying, your administration is no longer required to do the kinds of things it used to do when it reaches that finding. It can address that issue of bullying as it would address any issue of challenging behavior, whether they're looking at restorative practices at very low levels of bullying, or suspensions and expulsions for high levels of bullying. So your administration now has more discretion than it did when it was chasing chasing reports of bullying, and then through its investigations finding out that it wasn't bullying after all, it didn't meet the level of bullying. And then you have disappointed parents, you have exhausted administrators who have to go back and indicate to the parent your complaint didn't rise to the level of bullying. So this legislation was written to relieve your administration from some of the due process burdens that it had to address through its previous bullying policy.
That's very, very helpful. Thank you, Jody. Um, I don't want to cut off discussion. Is there anybody else who wants to add something? I do want to make one motion to amend and ask two questions, but I'm ready to move towards the actual work of the committee and getting this passed. Anybody else have any comments they want to make first?
No, I just wanted to say, well, no, I guess yes. I just wanted to say that was very clarifying, and I really appreciate getting a new perspective on this. So thank you very much.
Thank you. You know, you're going to be welcome here every meeting. Anyway, so
And
if
I'm
you-
going to expect another phone call, and I apologize again. It's the visiting nurse. I said,
Okay, so we'll just when that comes, Andrea, will you be signing off definitively, or could we just go into
no, I'm
recess?
just she's gonna tell me when she's gonna
Okay,
come.
so we'll go into recess when that happens.
Okay,
I found what I considered to be a discontinuity between two paragraphs. I showed it to Susan. I believe she's in accord with me. If you look under the second paragraph, could you go up to the second and third paragraph, Kate?
Where it says funding.
Funding and accountability.
Yep.
That's perfect. In funding, it says the district shall in its discretion allocate sufficient funding at its discretion. And in accountability, it says shall adopt and allocate resources. Well, either it's at its discretion or it shall, and we've kind of agreed. I'm going to make a motion that the first sentence under funding, that we strike the words in its discretion
Mhm.
and strike the word sufficient, because we're going to presume that what we're going to allocate is sufficient. And like so many other things in life, if it turns out we need more money, the superintendent will move the money around.
Well, and especially if the funding is to satisfy the requirements. So
Yeah.
I think
So-
it's
so
just
that-
too many words in
Okay.
play.
So it would read
Redundant.
that line would read, the district shall allocate funding to satisfy, et cetera, et cetera. And the motion would include, and I'll make the formal motion in a minute, under accountability, it currently reads the board shall adopt and allocate adequate resources. We shall change that, strike the words adopt and adequate and allocate adequate. It shall say the board shall use allocated resources. That's what we did in the previous paragraph to support the Connecticut school climate policy. And that is the extent of the amendments that I would like to offer. So I
and
move.
Matthew,
You
I'll tell
also
you,
had mentioned the ethical word. You didn't know.
I'll get down. I'll get down
Okay.
there. I don't think that's a.
Okay.
I don't. We'll get there. I don't think that's an amendment word. I think that's a editing word.
yeah,
Okay.
well, Matthew, when I was reading this yesterday, as I started to read this, those are exactly the things that I was crossing out.
We figured that would be something that would rise to your attention,
No.
Dr. Ackerman.
You know, I haven't been your student for long, Andrea, but you do have a strong whip on coming in line.
Yeah,
Okay, so I move that we amend the language in the funding paragraph to read, the first few words to read, the district shall allocate funding. And then the balance of the sentence as is there. And under the heading accountability, the first few words will be changed to read, the board shall use allocated resources, and continuing as it was. Do I have a
Can I
do have a
add something
second?
too, Matthew? One of the
Let
things we
me get the
discussed.
motion on the
Okay.
table and
All
then
right, sorry.
do I have a second to that motion?
second,
Okay, discussions, Susan.
Well, I just had said in some of the regulations is also the language of the law. So I think that Denise and I had discussed talking to some administrators and bringing a little committee together and refining that. And then once we get that done, we can share it with the board.
Well, we will have a second reading if there's, we're going to need to come back before, in the July 8th meeting to look at your work on the regulations. And if you have any suggestions for strengthening the policy, we'll be glad to look at them at that time.
Okay,
So it's been moved and seconded that we modify the language. Is somebody writing this down? I have notes. Are you taking it down, Susan or Denise,
yep,
as well?
I am.
Okay, so the district shall allocate funding to satisfy, etc. The board shall use allocated resources to support, etc. All those in favor of making that this amendment, vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. So the amendment is passed 2 to 0 to 0. Going on for just a couple of, for the purposes of discussion, under accountability number 2, it reads, a sound school environment that develops and sustains academic, social, emotional, ethics, civic, and intellectual skills. In my memory, over the last 4 years, I have never heard us discuss ethics. I'm glad to see it's there. I don't think we need to change it. I just think you guys in administration may want to discuss how you're going to achieve it and get that in the regs at some point. I think it's a great goal. Susan, you had some comments?
No, just that we had discussed the word ethical and
Yeah.
what that looks like.
So, I mean, if when you come back with regs, since the regs are going to be the operationalization of what the policy says, you share your ideas for how that might happen, and I think we'll be a much stronger district for it. And finally, I'm on number 3, and as I looked at A, B, and C, it said we were going to identify, prioritize, and support. So my note in my column side is, once prioritized, how is this going to be communicated to students, staff, parents, and the community? Again, that is operational question. Consider whether that's worth considering. Denise?
Sure. So we have an administrative retreat every August, and we will be training our administrators. We did brief them on this new legislation at last year's administrative retreat, but we will be sharing the forms. We'll be talking about process with them in August. And then we will ask them to put this on their first faculty meeting for the start of the school year. And then we will share it with parents through our website, our handbooks, and other means as appropriate.
That sounds wonderful. So I don't have any other questions on the policy. Andrea, did you want to raise any other questions?
Um,
Are we ready to vote for a first reading?
Yeah.
Okay, I move that we adopt policy 5131.911 as a first reading as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing no discussion, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor of adopting 5131.911 as amended, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that passes 2 to 0 to 0. And Denise, I thank you very much. Feel free to stay overnight at the office if it's cool.
No, get on the road.
Thank you.
Okay. I look forward to our July 8th meeting so we can lock this up. And Susan, you have the notes I made on the
I do.
form number 2, where it defines interview victim, and we agreed it should say.
Mhm. Yes, we made
Yeah.
those changes.
We
Okay,
made those
great.
changes. Yeah.
Great, thank you
good.
so very much.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Stay cool.
Okay,
Thank you.
Leah,
Safe travels.
you got a lucky bit of news. Because Clint has to leave early, we're going to change the order of things, and you're going to be the most important thing. We're saving you for last.
Sounds good.
Okay, we are now taking a look at P 6131.3273/4118.53. I wanted to, let's put the motion on the table. Andrea, would you like me to make the motion I'm going to do the motion that was submitted initially.
Yes, you
I
do.
move, for purposes of discussion, that we adopt P 6131.3273. Also, simultaneously, it's co-labeled as 4118.53. Electronic devices, generative AI, artificial intelligence, as submitted. Do I have a second to that?
Second.
Okay, so this motion has been made and seconded. I would like to add, I have reviewed the draft of that with Clint and Anne Marie, and the areas that we had agreed that where there was agreement are faithfully included in what was just moved. There was an area of differing perspectives between Anne Marie. If I use the language that you don't feel is accurate, please interrupt me, okay? There were two different perspectives. Both perspectives came from a place of, and I don't want to say moral, they came from a very good place. It's just a difference of perspective. It's not it's a respectful difference of perspective. It's been my view that a policy must state the what is desired by the Board of Education, that the regulations discuss the how that policy is to be implemented. For those who may be watching who don't know the way things are structured, the policy is the responsibility of the Board of Education. The regulations are entirely the responsibility of the administration, though they graciously let us share some input with them. Of the policy that I just made, there are 4 paragraphs, and from my reading, there is only one of the 4 paragraphs actually talks about policy. That is the last one. It mandates a comprehensive review at least every 2 years. That is a policy position. The other 3 paragraphs, all of which are good, I have no problem with the content, but all of the other paragraphs are, from my reading, aspirational or operational in nature. And so what I did on my own is I went and tried to meld the intended outcome, which I think we all agree on. A vibrant, living, and really comprehensive policy. I tried to reframe it in 5 brief sections. It is not 40 pages long, as you might expect from me. It's a little over 2 pages, a 12-point type. A statement of need and purpose, which grabs almost verbatim the first 3 paragraphs, so that the work there is not lost, is not meddled with, it is not trafficked. The second section is called collaborative approach. This was taken from the regulations, but it becomes a directive. It becomes a policy directive where the Board of Education requests the superintendent to establish a district-wide committee. The description of how that committee will work is the exact language from the regulations you prepared. The third section is elements of operational concern to be addressed in regulations. Again, it's my belief that no administration can operationalize something unless they're operationalizing what has been described. And so I have put in a bunch of bullets. Susan, I don't know if that did that get to Kate so she could put it up? You got it
I
too
know
as
you
well,
gave
Anne
me a
Marie, didn't
hard
you?
copy, but I didn't receive it digitally, I don't think. It was
Anne
sent
Marie,
to
I
Clint
sent
and
it to
Anne
you.
Marie.
Matthew,
might
are
have
you
been
referring to the
Susan.
email? You've had it in the body of the email?
Yes.
Yes,
June
that's correct.
23rd.
Can we get
Yep.
that on the screen?
I will, let me work on it.
Okay, and I'll keep talking. So I prefaced before I listed those elements, and I had it in 3 sections. Elements for students include, elements for teaching staff will include, elements for administration and Board of Education will include. I'll get to that when we get it on the screen. But I had an introductory thing called note. It's in smaller type so that it's not confused as being policy itself. Operations being an administrative function. This policy limits itself to enumerating currently identified elements that administration will oversee and direct. This list is not exhaustive, and may be amended between mandated policy reviews. Interested parties should refer to the accompanying regulations for any inter-review changes administration may need to implement. The intentionality behind that is to say we recognize who's in charge of regulations, and there's not only is there no effort to try to micromanage administration's operations, but we're saying very clearly we recognize where the authority lies. The 4th part of this is a single paragraph. It's the mandated review cycle. That was the last paragraph of the initial document. And the 5th says supplemental policy elements. And that basically says we'll continue our highly valued association with CABE and other educational organizations in the state of Connecticut, which was also drawn from the regulations. That's really not a regulation, that's a policy drive. So that was my goal. I'm going to back off the content for just a minute to suggest we have this co-labeled in the 6,000 and 4,000 series because we want it to be for certified staff and for personnel. I would argue that we need to have a 3rd category, and that would be for students. The same document, but also labeled, because if a parent is interested in seeing how something affects his, her, their student, they may not look under personnel or certified teachers. They're going to look under students because that's their interest. So I looked within our policy manual, and the closest thing we have is 5131.81, and that is electronic devices. And so I have tentatively numbered this 5131.82, so that whatever it is we have, whether it's the original or what I'm going to move as an amended version, it will be in 3 places instead of 2. Wouldn't change, be the same document. Can we bump the size of this up, Caitlin or Clint?
Let me see what I can do.
Thank you. So what you're going to see is going to be 2 colors. The green is, yes, Anne Marie, I'm sorry, I didn't recognize you.
Oh, Matthew, I just put up my hand, so you didn't, I haven't had it up long. Thanks for recognizing me. I love the idea of including students in this because I really do feel like students are going to be highly impacted by this policy. I'm wondering, because I know CABE has come out with a model policy, how do they categorize this particular, like an AI policy? I wonder if it's identified
Already
a
been
certain
done.
way or if it's multiple, if it falls under multiple categories.
Why don't we ask Jody?
Okay.
I don't have access to the CABE policy, but I believe it is only singly coded. That doesn't mean that is correct. Again, I like this conversation, and it's something that I'm taking back to my own work to see if this is something that we should code in different areas as well. So I'm moving toward Groton's point of view on this one.
Yeah, I just
Yeah,
don't want it to be confusing to people who are looking for it. I think it makes sense to because it does appeal to multiple stakeholders. I just don't want it to be confusing to people as they're looking for it.
I understand. The way I'm perceiving it is that by giving it 3 numbers and having it appear in 3 places, wherever one goes, they're going to find it. And it will not vary from one place to another. Which we have to remember if we ever amend it. We got to amend it in all of them. And I did discuss with Jody about coding, and I tried to follow his advice, which was to locate something that was seemed very close, and that was 0.81, and now we've numbered this 0.82. Do you have any concerns about that, Susan or Anne Marie?
I just feel like it's a lot to digest. I mean, I think that I almost feel like I need to see one at a time. Whether we start with the student version or the adult version.
But they're not
Staff
going to be
version.
different at all. They would be identical. That, I mean, that was the thought I had. You may not like them. You may want something else. I want to hear that. But I thought it would be the identical text. We're not going to finish this tonight. My
Yeah,
hope
I
is that
know.
this is, I'm hoping that
Yeah.
this will be a discussion which will really get us moving towards a solution, but there's no expectation that we're going to finish this tonight.
So CABE has not considered this, Jody, and looking at it from the different perspectives yet.
No, no. When I wrote this policy a couple of years ago, on just as ChatGPT was rearing its ugly head,
Yeah.
I wanted to get something out there quickly because a lot of districts were simply trying to shut everything off. And so I wanted to put something out there that was aspirational, that districts could see that there was a positive way of moving forward with AI. And certainly you've taken this through Matt's leadership, have taken this beyond what I did 2 years ago. Typically we will singly code or dual code. We don't typically try code. There are different ways of going. First of all, I would suggest whatever AI policy you have is your AI policy. I wouldn't create 3 of them. That's much too complicated and way too deep in the grain size as far as I'm concerned. You could address certain things within the regulations to address students and teachers and Board of Ed. That would be up to you. That's a business decision from your administration. If you felt that having 3 different places, although I agree with Matt, having too many places to look isn't going to be the problem. Trying to think, where did the board put the AI policy? Well, it impacts students. I'll look in the students. It's not there. Then I'll look at, well, where would it be? Maybe instruction. I'll look at instruction. No, it's not there. I'll look at personnel. Having it in all 3 areas would be, I think, easier for your community to access. If you didn't want to go to 3 different codings, you can always cross-reference as well. So
We've done that in the past.
Yeah.
That's been a good way to do it.
So those are ways of approaching it. Again, we dual code things like when you have a personnel policy, it'll be non-certified and certified. We'll do the 4.1 and 4.2 coding. But in this case, it's something very different. It's very new. There's nothing to stop you from doing 3 codes and then moving to 2 if you realize that having it in 3 different areas might be overwhelming or adding to confusion. You can make those decisions down the road.
When you first did it, did you do it under the lens of instruction?
I did.
So it'd be more comprehensive and it could include the other?
That's how I looked at it then. I looked at it, this
Yeah.
is an instructional issue, it's technology. Where are other technology
Right.
policies? So I embedded it in there.
That makes sense to me.
It does make sense, Susan. The rationale for doing multiple is not that it is wrong to have done it the way it was done, but it is to make it easy for any one of the stakeholders to find it. And as long as there's uniformity between the contents of the different code, the worst that you'll get is a question as to why is the same thing in 3 places? The answer to which is we want to make it easy for everybody. But we can come back to that. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this coding. We have a couple more meetings to
Okay.
go. So
And now the language that you added, Matthew, was that just to go in deeper to it? Was that generated through looking at the law? How did that transpose the purple language?
well, I don't have my little manual with you. I have a binder, as I mentioned to Susan, that's probably 200 pages worth of documents from around the country, different people trying to wrestle with AI. And this language is my language.
Okay.
but I don't take ownership of it. I'm a compiler of other people's language. So
Mhm.
this was my best shot to start the conversation. This is not a take it or leave it. I mean, if there's something that's problematic, let's rip it to shreds and rebuild it. I'm fine with that. But the answer to your question is I wrote it. It was informed by my reading, my broad
Right.
reading.
And you had mentioned also by some of the regulations, right?
Yes, some of it comes directly from the regulations, and I can point that out. Okay, so the first, can we scroll up a little bit? So do we just get the header stuff away? I apologize. Yeah. Go down to, so that we just start with number one, statement of purpose, bring that up to the top. Okay, so here we have the first three paragraphs of the original that you submitted. I have made a couple of changes. There's a spelling error in learning. I highlighted that in yellow. What I wanted to change, I crossed out. Anything I added is in blue. So everything in green is what you initially sent me. I added an intermediate paragraph. I did that because I wanted to try to help this document as a policy be an educational piece as to the metes and bounds of what we think artificial intelligence can do, and to do it in one or two sentences. I would turn basically to Clint. I didn't ask his comment. I did actually ask his comments. He said he suggested we do this tonight, but I would be grateful for Clint's comments about the second paragraph. The rest of it is exactly as you gave it to me, with the exception of one last sentence at the end of the fourth paragraph. It should be the policy, and we should make it the policy. This policy should be understood in conjunction with the accompanying regulations. I want people to see the policy and turn to the regulations to see how you will operationalize it.
So just a few quick hits. I'm always a little uncomfortable with the just general term of artificial intelligence. That's why I really pushed for generative artificial intelligence, just because we use in the common vocabulary, we do just call it artificial intelligence, AI, but it is a specific set of that. So if we want to be precise, it's just it's out there.
I've made that change. I've made that change.
I see where you're going with this, and I like what you have listed in that second sentence, Matthew. It's always going to be an incomplete list just because of the power and the opportunities with which a tool like this can be used. So if we're comfortable with this list as examples with some type of et cetera, potentially, then okay. But again, when you start trying to define what it is through example or possible uses, it can be, it could be an infinite number of uses, and it continues to change as we see, as we get into a more agentic realm of generative AI tools, et cetera, et cetera.
Would you be more comfortable, Clint, if we had it demands great user reflection in parentheses in areas such as, and then at the very end, value claims, etc.
I would be more comfortable with such as.
Okay.
Certainly not for a
In
policy, but
in
I typically,
areas such as.
great.
What were you saying, Clint?
As an aside, we can certainly call it a tool here. But as I work professionally with teachers and others, I do like to refer to it as more of an instrument, because it is not something that is commonly known as far as, a set recipe ABC. There are so many permutations in the way that you craft and use some of these tools. I think that word works better, certainly not for a policy, but as we start talking about this,
Would you like for consistency for us to refer to this in this document as an instrument or a tool?
no, sorry, this is an aside. I don't think instruments appropriate for a policy per se. It's more as we continue to try to build a
Okay.
common mental model amongst us and as we continue to take that out in the world and work with our teachers and students and so forth.
Okay. So, are there any comments, Andrea, Anne Marie, any comments about, I guess I should make a motion to amend, no, let's talk about it first before I make a motion to amend. Are you okay with that, guys? Anne Marine saying yes.
Yes.
Susan saying yes.
Yep.
Okay, good. So is there anything else on section 1 that you want to talk about? Okay, moving on to section 2. Section 2 is lifted from the policy statement that you have prepared. No, I'm looking at the wrong policy statement. How about if I do AI? No, live animals in the classroom. Okay. The Board of Education requests that the superintendent establish, take out the word to establish a district GAI advisory committee. So the blue paragraph, which I wrote, is the policy statement. We are saying that we are asking the superintendent to establish this committee. That's the policy. And we talk about, and I put in from your, the green is actually what you had. I just substituted the word mitigate instead of minimize, but whichever one you prefer is fine with me.
I think I see Anne Marie's hand up.
I'm sorry, Anne Marie, I'm looking downward. Please speak up, Anne Marie. We're friends.
Yeah, I typically don't yell out. I'm a rule follower. Who are we talking about when we talk about legal experts?
I have no idea. That was
Oh.
that was in your that was what you had in the I got that from the God, I'm losing my mind.
Regulation?
I got that from the regulations.
So I will, if I can jump in here, I don't know what the original intent was or if that was in the CABE policy or not, Jody. It could have been something we added. Who knows? My understanding or my assumption would be part of this world as we're evolving, there is regular and ongoing litigation around the training data that is used to build many of these models, and the appropriateness with which some of that data is used. So there are many legal questions that are still outstanding in both the training of these models as well as the inference using these models and so forth. So my strong inclination is to believe that it's in reference to that. That landscape will be continuing to change, I would predict, over time.
So I'm just wondering if we're going to have a district committee, are we committing to having one or more legal experts, and who will they be? So I always wonder if something is written down, what are we committing to?
It's a fair question. I don't think we should have them as a standing member of the committee. But
Right.
if we feel that that's important to keep in there, it could be some type of language, in consultation with as needed or what have you.
Yeah, I imagined, and I really didn't articulate that very well. Thank you, Anne Marie. I had imagined that was going to be Floyd. I didn't know why it was the text that was in the regulations and said legal experts, and I made it one or more, so we weren't committing to more than one. But I had presumed it would be
Matthew,
Floyd. We don't need to do
Matthew.
it. That's just your operational decision to have the lawyer review everything.
Yeah, and I
Matthew,
always
I have to
worry,
say-
Go ahead.
Matthew, I have to
Rebecca.
say that stopped me too.
Okay,
That stopped me too. So,
so
I
Anne
have
Marie,
the same question.
We always submit, like once we have decided on this, we do let Floyd take a look at it. But I don't know
Yeah.
if he would be an
Yeah, but if
active
we're
member.
meeting regularly as a committee, I don't think we want to we have committee meetings sometimes once a month or a couple times a quarter. I don't know if we want to commit to bringing in an attorney for all of those, or some kind of legal expert at every one of those meetings, that could be costly for the district. So I just would be very careful,
I think you're right, Anne
to
Marie.
putting something like that in writing.
I think you're right. I don't think it would hurt to take it out completely with the understanding that since you're going to use Floyd's services anyway, that you'll use him as an advisor whenever you want to use him.
Right.
And I
So we
just
can
want to
do-
also say, Matthew, we have quite a few committees already that this might align with. Like we've had curriculum and instruction committee where we could really focus on AI. Groton Teaching and Learning, Anne Marie put together the strategic planning group. So we have like an abundance of committees already that maybe this would align better to one of them that would continue the work of teaching and learning and curriculum and instruction, but look at it from the vantage point of how AI is going to influence instruction.
So let me offer an idea. My intent was to begin the conversation. We've begun the
Mhm.
conversation. I would be delighted if you, Anne Marie, and Susan, and with Jody, if he's willing, we know what we want to have, which is a committee.
Mm.
How we structure the committee is not my concern. My concern is that we state we want to have a committee. Why don't you write up the paragraph the way you guys want it? And we'll just pass on that and continue, come back to that next time. We're not voting on anything.
Sure.
That sounds good. Thank you, Matthew.
Okay.
Can I ask one more clarifying question? Right now we have, I'm looping back to this and I apologize. We label this as instruction, personnel, certified. Where does the non-certified piece come in here? We talked about students and I can see certified and the students piece, but I'm having trouble seeing where the non-certified piece comes in. And forgive me if it's really obvious and I'm just not seeing it.
I just took it the way it was and added something to it. I didn't bring any evaluative focus on the inclusion. I just presume that's the way it was. This committee, as far as I am aware, Andrea, tell me if I'm wrong, this committee that's an operational decision. I just want the students involved too.
Clint, is there something I'm missing?
No, I don't have anything to add to that. Sorry.
Well, I just know because we talked a few minutes ago about triple labeling and I maybe we, unless I'm missing something, maybe that we can eliminate that label.
Anne Marie, I think you're making a really good point. I think again, this gets to where policy and community mores and your board, is looking to communicate to its audience as to where it's most feasible to find certain policies. But you could certainly take this, you could add business, this is again the 3000 series, you could add non-certified, certified. I think Clint will tell you that there probably isn't an area of the board's overall purview and your administration and the entire district where AI won't be impacted some way. It'll be in your bylaws, it'll be in personnel, it'll be business, it'll be community. You can literally have 9 codes for 9 sections. But I think your board is gonna have to make a business decision as to where is the community right now in terms of what it needs to know and how to find it, and the administration being able to communicate that to your public. I think, but this can all, you can start with 9 and go to 1. You can start with 1 and go to 9. I think it's really a business decision at this point. But you make a great point.
And we
Thanks.
do have the remaining, assuming Matthew, you want to keep this in as we scroll down here, but the ability to have this looked at regularly and thoughtfully is critical to this. So I'm less concerned about getting 100% now, just because I do not think 100% is a viable option for anyone at this point.
So, Andrea, would I be misspeaking if I said that I would love Susan and Anne Marie to think about how we want it coded? I don't mean choosing the numbers, but what sections we want it in, and come back at the next meeting with your ideas. I think we'd be receptive to that, wouldn't you, Andrea?
Absolutely. Yes, yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way we should be a team. Okay. So I'm going to go on now. to section 3? Is that all right, everybody?
Yes.
Okay. Leah, you hanging in there with us?
Yep, I'm still here.
Okay, thanks. I haven't forgotten you. Elements of operational concern to be addressed in regulations. I read you the note out loud before. So again, this is Matthew's pass at the elements for students. You may wish to delete something, you may wish to modify something, you may wish to add something. This is not a package I'm selling. I just want to get the conversation started. Authorized GAI platforms by grade level and subject matter. We're not telling you how to do it, just what we're going to need. I drew that from Clint. Age developmental appropriate access and equity. Age appropriate instructional modalities. Student GAI ethical use standards. Student GAI resource utilization, analytic evaluation of outputs, documentation, and critical thinking skills to discern the technology's limitations, and digital literacy, safety, boundaries, and accountability. Can we bump the size of this again?
On it.
Thank you. Okay, and we'll raise it so whoever people can read the paragraph that follows. There we go. Okay. You don't need me to read it aloud. You're capable of reading it.
Matthew, very, very difficult for me to see.
Okay, I will read it then. I'm happy. Thank you, Andrea. Student
Thank you.
violations of GAI usage policy will be subject to appropriate disciplinary action, e.g. warnings, restorative acts, academic penalties, or more severe measures commensurate with the severity and repetition of the offense or offenses. Administration will annually amend student handbooks so parents, guardians, and students have access to district policy and expectations. Regulatory changes within a given academic year shall at a minimum be posted via Parents Square. What do you all think about that?
Matthew, I'm going to say what I said to you on, I guess, maybe it was Sunday, I don't know. I think there's too much in there. I think it goes over into regulations. I mean, this is what we're going to do, and how we're going to do it is warnings, restorative acts, and all that sort of thing. I think it's too much.
Feedback?
I agree
Marie,
with you,
Susan?
Andrea. I really think historically
agree.
we've tried to keep the policy directly related to the legislations, short and sweet, and then the regulations, those are more pliable. So as things change with AI, we're going to be evolving. The policy and the law may not change year to year, but certainly regulations we might tighten up. And I would want to, or the future superintendent may want to be able to have that ability to do that with the staff as we see fit.
Well, that is all operations doing with the staff as you see fit. There's nothing in here that's directed to that. Let me give a hypothetical. Perhaps I'm stretching too far. If we don't have these things, if I get voted down, it won't be the first time in life. Life will go on. I'm good with that. But if we take these specific directions, these are directives. We call them requests, but they're directives. That's the policy directives. If we don't have policy directives and student X does something that is really inappropriate, and we want to exercise some sanctions at whatever level, and the parent comes and says, you can't do that. There's no policy that says there's anything wrong. We have to state what it is, in my humble opinion, we have to state in broad strokes what our intended outcomes are. We do need to have our platforms vary by grade level and subject matter. We do need to have age and developmental appropriate access and equity, and instructional modalities. Fourth grade, fifth grades can be quite different from and you're going to define all the operational stuff in regulations.
That's right. But I would also say that our administrators are very much well aware of that. And we have something called a student handbook that we're actually revisiting all of them to make sure they're in line with legislation, to make sure our regulations are up to date. And that's what the parent sees, because you're right, this is the information that parents and kids need to know. You know, should they not follow what is expected in schools?
Well,
So I think that we do have our bases covered in so many ways, first through policy, then regulations, then the student handbook, then the parent nights and the messages that good principals send out on a regular basis.
Matthew, can I ask a clarifying question,
Sure.
please?
Sure.
So you have student violations of GAI usage policies will be subject to appropriate disciplinary. What are those usage policies that you're referencing there?
Ah, very, very good. Good catch. I think we should change that to regulations, policy to regulations. Good catch, Clint.
So are you gonna leave in, and I think that would be okay, in my view anyway, student GAI, resource utilization, blah, blah, blah. Analytic, no, I'm on the wrong one. The age appropriate instructional modalities. And I saw age appropriate, again, very difficult for me to see. Education.
Can you
Oh,
blow
here
that
it
up
is.
again, Clint? More, maybe to 200?
You know, I think it's just me. I think it's today. As I said, this is not the best medical day
Sorry.
for me. But
I'm going
anyway,
fast.
where it says age appropriate disciplinary something. Doesn't that
It's
just
co-
cover it? You
It's
don't have to
coming.
go through all that other stuff.
Well, obviously, you know that I feel strongly that any policy direct what the regulations are to do.
And where does it
Let-
say the part, Clint, about age appropriate?
Right here, and elements for Matthew has elements for students include, and it's the fourth bullet, I think, is what you're referring to.
Age appropriate instructional modalities, student GAI.
No, not instructional. It was another one about age appropriate.
Age developmental
This-
appropriate access and equity.
No, disciplinary actions, I think it said.
Oh, that is below. That is not a bullet.
Yeah.
That is
And doesn't that cover everything? Where you just say it's age appropriate, and then you let the professionals deal that out.
That's exactly what this does. It says age appropriate and it lets the professionals do in regulations whatever they want.
Yeah, but I think it needs to just stop there.
Okay, maybe this is a good time to move on. We're not going to vote on anything tonight. Please, whether you're on the committee or in an advisory capacity or in administration, give some thought. If this format does not appeal to you, I invite you to come up with an alternative format that states what the intended outcomes are. I have no ownership of this language or this structure, but we do need to have a policy that says, essentially, the Board of Education directs the administration to do X, Y, and Z. We need to articulate what the X, Y, and Z are. And then the administration.
I think I disagree with that. I don't
Okay.
think I think my fear is that we're going to move what is policy into what is regulation, and that's going to have well, I don't, what word, I guess the word I'm looking for is, I don't want to say devastating because that's too difficult. That's too hard for me.
Detrimental.
Thank you. And I think that policy needs to stick with policy, and there are deep implications for having policy become regulation. That's my fear.
Yeah, well,
Can we just direct?
I think you
Can we
very
just,
well.
no, if we need to, if it needs to be directed, just direct them to implement the recommendations of the handbook, of the student handbook.
Yeah.
Then we need to,
Yes.
then we need to see the handbook before we can do the policy.
Well,
Well,
I'm
you
sure
don't
we
see
can.
the regulations before you do the policy. Sometimes we see it during or after. So I think they
Well-
have to go hand in hand.
I
They're directed by
I will really
policy.
take some time in the next week or two to really consider all that I've heard you say. So I'm going to really see what I can do to mold this a little bit better. At the same time, if the policy does not state the intended outcomes, it is not a policy. Though what you said, Andrea, I think really accurately mirrors the different perspectives that Anna Marie and I had chatted about at our meeting.
Mm.
And
Yes.
maybe that's because we've been principals and we're administrators. And maybe that's because we look at things differently. But
It's
I see
possible.
that deep implication for having policy move over into
Okay.
regulations. I fear that.
Yeah. Okay, well, we will come back to this. It is now 7:17. I'm going to think, Leah, that if we go another 13 minutes, we can go as far as we go, and then it's your turn, okay?
Sounds good.
You need to go?
Sorry, I thought we were ending the AI session. You want to continue,
I
Matthew?
was going to go on and continue until we got to 7:30, but what's your
Fair enough.
pleasure? We can stop now if you want. I
Well,
think we
I'm
started the
mindful of
process.
Leah being here. She has a young
Okay.
family and she's waiting.
So if what I brought today sparks somebody else to come up with another approach that is, I want to say better, that responds to my concerns in the original document, is that the only thing that was a directive for the review, that there was really nothing, in my opinion, nothing that stated what the policy outcomes were supposed to be. So if you have another way of looking at the policy outcomes, I'll be delighted to see it at our next meeting. And we're
Jody,
probably
can I
not going
just
to finish
ask
in
you while
July.
you're here?
Maybe we'll finish in August.
Jody, since you're here and you know, like around the state, what people have been doing, have you seen outcome statements on these policies that seem to be mindful and would be something we should look at?
Not specifically with AI. Again, different boards will take different approaches in terms of how it directs superintendent to develop the regulations. Some are more prescriptive. Some policies, again, this is a great conversation. Looking, a lot of boards will take regulations and apply it in their policies. I discourage that. I tend to like policies that, as Matt articulated, deal with the what. And then the regulations deal with the how, and you want to make sure that the regulations implement the policy. But you also have to be careful of, and what I hear you saying, Susan and Mary Ann and Clint, is that you have to be careful that the directive doesn't become so specific, using Andrea's word, it doesn't become detrimental to your administration carrying out your policy.
Yeah.
And that really is, and I know you want to end this at this point, but I stand ready to talk to you, Susan, and your team to help you with what you're trying to bring back to Matthew. And I'm always available to Matthew as well to have that conversation on the side as well, and we can come back at our next meeting and nail this. But
Thank you, Jody. I would appreciate that support.
I'd be more than happy to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I too thank you for the clarification. This is not going to be an easy policy. I think Groton is very lucky to have Jody and Clint as real experts, and together we're going to take a little longer, but we're going to do a good job. And Susan, I look forward to your improvements on what I've done. But at least we got a place to start now.
Yeah, I agree. We've got a good starting place.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So for those who have other things to do, Mr. Kennedy, go and take care of our town, please.
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
And Dr.
Okay.
Mancini, if you're.
Thank you, Anne Marie. I appreciate it very much.
Good night, everyone.
Good
Good
night,
night.
Jody. We'll be talking.
Okay. Night.
Well, so what did you think of all that, Leah?
I'm very interested in improving the school climate, and I think it connects well with what I'm proposing. So,
Absolutely. So you might want to talk to them about what you've done in preparation, besides writing a policy with, Denise Doolittle's support, and I think a CABE version. Because you've really gotten a grant that will help support implementation.
mhm,
So you want to give them a little background.
okay.
That's the
Um,
nurse.
So I'm Lee Mutron. I'm one of the counselors at the middle school. Um, and I'm looking to propose a therapy dog program for the next school year. I've received funding from Groton Education Fund and also a nonprofit in Newtown, which was founded by a family who was affected by the Newtown shooting. And the girl's name is Charlotte, and Charlotte's Litter is the organization. And basically, because the schools were so affected by this event, dogs were brought in and used therapeutically to help the students deal with the tragedy. So I'm feel very lucky that we were able to receive that grant as well. And the work that the nonprofit is doing is really motivational for me. So upon receiving those two grants, I've looked into kind of the regulations and the guidelines through what's called AAIP. So that organization provides the foundation for how to implement therapy dogs in schools because it works with professionals. So I have lined up like what insurance policy I would use so that way Willow and I are covered as a registered therapy dog team. And we've done all the training and we're registered with Pet Partners, which works in conjunction with AAIP. To support professionals working in the field with therapy dogs.
I've read over the document. I think it's wonderful. You may not know it, but I was a hospital chaplain for a number of years after I retired, and therapy dogs are an extraordinary resource. So I really look forward to this happening, and I'll do everything I can. I only have one question about the policy. I'm not sure which language you want because it's marked as alternate language. It says here, requests to bring therapy dogs to school may only be made by current district employees. And that raised two questions in my mind. First of all, are we limiting it to just employees? Or if there's a student for whom there is a medical necessity, whether it's physical or emotional, to have.
So it's separate. It's therapy dog
That's
is
a separate-
separate from service dog. So
Okay, got it.
therapy dog
We have
has to
that
be,
policy too.
yeah, has to have, that's why this is gonna be separate from the service dog policy because therapy dogs, so Willow would be like a facility dog and a therapy dog because she would be stationed at GMS. But we could also be utilized in other schools in the district if there's an event or if there's needed support. So therapy dogs work with a handler and to provide like comfort and support. So it's not to provide like a service under the American Disabilities Act. So it's its own separate thing.
Thank you very much. The other question that I had is the phrase here, current district employees. And what you said may answer my question, but I'll ask the question anyway so you can clarify it if I got it wrong. My concern was the word current district employees. And maybe, and I looked at it from the point of view as could it be a violation of ADA to discriminate in hiring an otherwise exceptional candidate based on his or her need for a dog that would compensate for a disability. But you pointed out the difference between service dogs and therapy dogs. So that answers
Yeah.
that piece of the question. But I don't like the idea of saying at current employees. We may have a hire in a year or 2 or 3 in another school who is an accredited handler or becomes an accredited handler for a therapy dog. And I don't want that to limit us and constrain the superintendent from saying, that's a great idea. We could use a therapy dog in XYZ elementary school or the high school. So if we're using the alternative language, do you have any objection or see any reason to limit it to current employees? It's a qualification of the person, not their status as to when they were hired. That's really an issue to me.
Yeah, they would have to be like working in the building, so maybe we could phrase it as has a contract or something about
Is an employee of the district?
yeah,
But the word current,
impending.
the word current doesn't affect, doesn't even address where it is. It's the word current is completely limiting to the time somebody has become a GPS employee to only current employees. I'm not talking
could-
about the qualifications. I get it. I get it. And if we had 4 more people in the middle school who said they were handlers and they'd met all these things, it doesn't mean that the administration is going to have 4 more people. That's an operational decision that the administration will make. I just don't want to bar a future employee from having this opportunity to propose being an accredited handler. Susan, what do you think?
I don't know. Do you know why the current was listed there? I don't know exactly why it was. I mean, I think it needs to be an employee. Although I have to say that we do have school resource officers and police who are dog handlers, and I think they are therapy dogs as well when they come
Yes.
into the school. But they're not limited to a facility, so they are able to go to like we had the dog come in when we had that horrific accident with our teens in the beginning of the school year, and they were really served us well. I mean, it made a real big difference, I think, in the school.
I think what it's trying to say, because attached to the policy, you have to like submit a request to Susan, like to have the therapy dog at the school. So I think it's just saying that in order to request to bring the therapy dog, you have to be in the district. So
Well,
I don't know
think
if we
could say made by a district employee. I think that would say it. Do you think so, Andrea and Matthew?
I have to say that I thought we were going to halt the meeting when Matthew, what was the
Oh,
word
if
you
you
used?
need to go, just
I
wait.
did. I did. The nurse called and I did, but I missed all the conversation because I said that the phone rang and I said, that's the
Oh, I'm
nurse.
sorry. I
That's
just
okay.
missed it. I would have put us in
What was the word you used? See,
in recess. I would have put us
in
in recess.
recess. Okay.
But
So,
Leah
just bring
has
me up
done a
to
nice
what-
job. I think she could fill you in.
Yeah, do it
Yeah.
again.
Dr.
Leah.
Ackerman.
Do it again, Leah.
Yeah.
Play it again, Sam.
So essentially I'm proposing a therapy dog program at the middle school for next year. And we were just talking about the difference between service dogs and therapy dogs. So therapy dogs have a handler and they're a registered therapy dog team through an organization. So Willow and I are registered through Pet Partners. And it's not a certification. I had to go through like a test to see her appropriateness for basically comforting people. So
when I read this, if I wanted to ask this question, Leah. When I read this, I think I misread it. So what you're saying is you want to bring a therapy dog program into the middle school. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, so I'm a counselor at the middle school. So there are some situations where, and this happened even this past year, where sometimes a student just needs the comfort there of a dog, and it's not anything that can be like, sometimes everything can't be resolved in that moment, in that 10 or 15-minute session, that it's sometimes just the comfort of having an animal there, where you don't have to say anything. And there's research about oxytocin being released to like bring the stress levels and the cortisol down. So sometimes just in certain situations, I think it would be really helpful for emotional regulation for a lot of the middle schoolers. So, and I think that it could be used in like, I was talking to Susan about having it be like an incentive. So I want to be there like in the morning, welcoming the kids, and encouraging them and helping to, promote enjoying school and wanting to be at school. So that's a main goal of mine for next year, is to promote attendance. That's really what I'm focused on first.
Totally misread this. That's not what I thought you're advocating for. I'm 100% with you. Except for therapy cats, but that's another story. So let me understand now. That would be at the middle school. Did you say it in the morning, or would it be all day? How would that work?
Yes, so it would be all day. I'd like to start with 1 to 2 days, just to get her acclimated to the routine of school. She wouldn't go into the calf just because of the food and like health safety reasons. And then I would like to put in like guidelines for teachers, like how to request her to come up to the classroom. And no more than 3 kids up at a time petting her, but just having regulations in place to protect her and teach the students how to approach dogs and incorporate kind of the caring and empathy part of what comes with caring for dogs.
I've seen people like in grocery stores, and somebody will go up to the dog and start to pet it, and they'll say, no, he's on duty, and is that part of the training for the children?
So service dogs service a specific one person and their disability. Therapy dogs are for comfort for anyone. So there's community events that Pet Partners has that you can go to. And Willow would be a therapy dog and a facility dog. So she would be for everyone, for staff, for faculty. It's to help like bring the community together is how I envision it. And when I've come to school, I've helped with the girls on the run after school, and they really liked that she was like at the finish line. So they were petting her like as they were finishing. And they wrote me a nice little thank you note and drew Willow. So I really think that, even just being there those 2 days, I feel like she made a huge impact, and as a motivator for them. So we could use it as like an incentive and have it being a positive thing. If you are in school all week, then you can have Willow time on Friday. And then they're also,
I love this idea.
this organization is also donating 15 copies of Good Dogs, Great Listeners and The Dogs of Newtown. So I was also talking to our librarian about having a spot in the library with a beanbag, so the kids could read. I've really been trying to encourage my students to read more. And I've been giving out like summer reading books and things like that. So therapy dogs are also used in schools because kids can read to therapy dogs, and they're not going to be upset if they make a mistake or something like that. So that's how they're used in elementary schools a lot of the times, is to promote reading. So that's another idea that I've been working on, with the librarians as well.
We had
And
a
Leah
teacher.
said that when she started this, she really went to the Groton Foundation, and she received a grant so that she could get
Oh,
the
wow.
insurance and the training and all of these things. So she's received a grant from our own retired teachers with the Groton Teaching Foundation, and has really done a lot of homework around this. I really commend her for doing this, and I think you've brought Willow in a couple times just to have people meet her and participate, like you said. So she's done a lot of background work, and is really invested in, thinks that this will help our Groton Middle School culture and climate.
Yes. We had a teacher at Fitch Middle School. I can't remember her last name. 30 years ago. That's why. but her first name was Suzanne. And I don't know if you've met her through your organization or your outreach, but see if you can figure out who she is, because she was a special ed teacher, and she had I guess a therapy dog that she used in a very similar way that you're talking about. So she has actual expertise in using that at the middle school level. And you might, I don't know who would know her name. Maybe some other counselor would remember her last name. But the
Okay,
first
yeah,
is Suzanne.
okay.
If
Not
it comes to
Suzanne
me, I'll
Talbot.
tell you.
I
Not
think
Suzanne Talbot. She's the
Talbot?
school psychologist. Suzanne Talbot.
No, no. It was a special ed teacher, and she retired not long after I did. She was at.
so I guess you
Ask
figured
around.
out,
I'm
Leah.
sure Suzanne Talbot knows her. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Matthew. I'm sorry,
So
Matthew.
Leah, you figured out that we're very supportive of what you're doing.
Thank
I
you.
have- I have some problems with the format. It says alternative language. Alternative to what?
So
What-
I,
what do we-
Susan, we have a
The
person
CAPE
who,
policy, the
Yeah,
original
so-
CAPE policy.
I put some of my notes on here for, the staff member who writes, some of our policies, but, I think the alternate language is like something you can include or not include. That's how I took
I'd
it.
like to know what it is we're supposed to vote on. So this is what we're supposed to recommend that the full board vote on. So
Yeah.
let me throw this out at you and see how, I'll raise a flag and see if anybody salutes, okay? Go over the text and determine if you want some language, and if you want some language, insert the language that you want. And if you don't feel that the language is necessary, then take it out. I'm not instructing you on what to do, just whatever choice you want, make a choice. Speak with Susan so that she's on board with what you want to do. The only thing that I would kind of insist on as an individual voter, not saying what the other members would do, is delete the word current, so that if there is another school or another person in the future, we haven't locked our hands to it and have to refuse somebody because it's policy that they can't be there.
I think it's just talking about alternate language for the request. So Susan, like, it says such request must be submitted to the school's principal, and it has like, and I think there was like an attached form to fill out with like the vaccinations and documentation of the dog license and the training and the insurance.
So I see that all in your
yeah.
regulations. All
So
the
what
forms are listed in regulations at the back.
So then we can delete.
Maybe the alternative language needs to go with the regulations, but I want to make sure that people know that they have to request.
Right.
So, I mean, I think it could go either way. I think we take out alternative language and just have that as a preface of how you go about it. But then in the regulations, you have all your forms.
Okay.
So you have all the documentation of what would have to happen.
There's another linguistic issue. It says owner handler. It says nothing about the owner handler not being a faculty member or not being an employee. If I take my dog, well, I'm on the school board, so maybe I would qualify. If once I'm off the school board, if I train my dog to be a therapy dog and I'm willing to be a volunteer, under this, I'm an owner and I'm a handler. Is that what you want, to open this up to volunteers who are accredited? Or do you want to limit it to faculty or to employees? That's your choice, Susan. But if it is to be limited to the members of the school community, then let's delete the word owner handler and find another label that denotes that the owner handler is a member of the community.
But how many times are you going to find a owner handler? I mean, what if you?
So I think I think the way it's written, it's calling the teacher or other qualified school personnel the owner or the handler, like,
Where
because
does
they
it say
are.
that?
So that's just, I think
Oh,
we should
okay.
clarify it.
I
um,
see. It's up above.
Yeah,
Okay.
it does say it up above.
Okay, my
Yeah.
apologies. My apologies. I misread that.
Where,
Thank you.
where is this?
Right
But we
under
could
therapy dogs,
clarify.
it says the Board of Education, I don't want to use the word support. I would check out support and says authorizes.
Mhm. I would say therapy dog teams because the word like use isn't recommended because you're not like using the dog, you're working with them as part of a team. So you could say the Board of Education, what was the word you used?
Authorizes.
Authorizes therapy dog teams.
You want therapy dog teams now?
So the word like use of therapy dog is just not recommended
Okay,
by
so
AIP.
why don't
so-
you rework this to so that you and Susan are really comfortable with the language, because we're going to be voting on the language you present us.
Okay.
And I see close to mathematically impossible situation where we're not going to approve what you want, okay? Just get the
I
language.
think you've been
that you
working with
want.
Erica, right?
Yeah.
You just
So,
work with
and
Erica to get the
Denise
language.
Doolittle a little bit too.
Mhm.
So we could bring people together and just fine tune this.
Good. And we're going to next
I mean-
meet on July 8th. Would that be convenient for you to come back on July 8th?
I don't think that, I just got a message from Clint. He's not available on July 8th. He's on
Okay,
vacation.
well, we're going to have to find another date in July, so
Yeah.
that's up in the air. But are
And
you
if
going to be
you-
in town in the month of July?
Yeah, I'll be around. Yep.
If there are any dates that you're not going to be, that you're aware that you're not going to be around, would you let Susan know so we don't schedule it for when you're not here? You are very valuable and we want to get this in place.
And I have Ocean
Am
City.
I
New
right,
Jersey
am I
the
right,
third
Andy?
week,
Is
so
that your
we'll
sense
work
as
on it.
well?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Am I speaking for both of us and saying we want this to happen?
Oh, absolutely. And,
Okay.
if you, contact Denise Doolittle, she knows that teacher. That teacher was
She
here
would.
when she,
Yeah. Suzanne.
Suzanne, yes.
Susan, if you want me to edit it and then I can share with you and then you
Yeah.
can,
And Erica. We'll make this happen.
yeah,
Yes,
sure.
we'll
Thank you so
absolutely
much
make
for your
this happen in
dedication,
July.
Leah.
Yep, no
I
problem.
worked with
Thank you.
Leah a lot, especially with kids who've had some struggles, and she is their champion. When I say, "Who do you have?" when you go back, and it's always their counselor. So
Every
we
once
have
in
to
a
say
while,
thank you.
we
Thanks.
can't know, unlike Andrea, who seems to know everybody, the rest of us don't know everybody. So having an opportunity to interact with you and see what good fortune our students have to have people like you, it makes
That's
my
right.
day. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And thank you for hanging out all night.
Yeah. No problem.
Okay,
All
so
right. Thanks, everybody.
so what we are doing is we're continuing therapy dogs to the July meeting. Is that correct?
And will, AI go to that as well? Or is that just gonna be standing part of
No,
the,
that'll be to the July meeting. Initial mood discussion, I don't have the word continued. To be continued in July. Susan, are we going to have anything new in July besides these two things?
At the regular meeting, no.
No, the policy meeting.
Oh, I don't know. I'll talk to Erica.
Try to give
Can I
us
think
try to give us a vacation if you can.
okay, I will.
You guys have a blessed night. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
motion to adjourn?
I second the motion. We're gonna have a lot of discussion. All those in favor?
Hi.
Okay, unanimous vote to adjourn. Have a blessed night, everybody.
Thank you too.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, Leah.
Yeah,
Thank
no
you,
problem.
Leah.
Thank you, Andrea and Matthew.
You bet.